Welcome back to the Sensitivity Doctor. Today is an incredibly important conversation with Scarlett Lewis, who is the mother of Jesse Lewis, who was killed in Sandy Hook 13 years ago. Not only did he show so much courage on that day, but he left a lasting message to his mother to choose love, which she has made her life's mission. With her organization, chooselove.org, she is working with 17,000 schools and counting to try to teach our kids essential skills for dealing with things like bullying and stress and anxiety and the desire to hurt themselves or maybe even others. Her and I hope you get as excited as I am, are going to be joining forces on our missions to try to bring mental health screeners into schools and to try to prevent these tragedies before they begin. Not only that, she is just brilliant. You can tell her passion is so deep for this topic. So you're going to walk away with ideas on what to do today with your own anxieties around maybe the safety of your children in their schools. Or what can we do with the situation that seems like there's no hope? There truly is hope, and I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. Enjoy. So how was your holiday? I got to speak with you. I got to meet you last month, which was such an honor, and I was so excited to sit down and talk with you. So, but how were your holidays?
They were, filled with micro moments of joy as well as pain. It's interesting. I was just talking
Yeah.
to over 250 educators, and I was explaining to them that I have this stack of Christmas cards, and this was after the new year. And I said, I still have them unopened because I love getting them and I love seeing the highlights of everybody's year. I love seeing
Yeah.
kids that are growing older year by year and what they're doing. I love it. And at the same time, I have to be strong when I open them because
Yeah.
it's a reminder to me that I don't have that with one of my children. And it's so, I mean, there's pain and there's joy. I had a one of my ambassadors when I everybody always says, "How was your holiday?" And people say, "Oh, it was great. How was yours? It was just wonderful. Oh, we did this
Yeah.
and that." And she responded by saying it was really hard. And I just found myself dropping into the present moment, really appreciating that authenticity and having this real deep connection, which was really nice.
Yeah. I
Mm.
love that. Yeah, I have to say, as a therapist, I think my experience is obviously a little altered where I'm waiting. I had a client send me this video clip. She sent it to me over the break, and it was a video clip of someone who had just been beaten up. And then it was the person approaching this other character, and the caption said, "Me getting ready to tell my therapist about my holidays." So, so I think I'm kind of more on the other end where I get almost a little surprised when someone says, "It
Oh,
was
yeah.
great."
Yeah.
But gosh, I could totally appreciate that. I mean, I even think about when you mentioned the stack of cards, not so much just seeing everyone else's updates. Like, I don't open my cards, I leave them as a stack for my kids to open. Like, it's like a
Oh, wow.
thing. We do it
Yeah.
all together, but I'm just thinking if that changed, like even something as simple as like if they weren't the one opening the cards anymore, that would break me in half. And so I just can't, like, that's a lot.
I
And
used to
so
send those
I'm
cards out.
so,
I used to make my own cards and I used to have so much fun picking
yeah,
out the pictures of what we did, all of that.
right.
I haven't sent out a card for 13 years. And that's just, that I have my things and still things that I'm working on every single day.
Yeah. Well, when you say 13 years ago, some people tuning in will know who you are right away. Some people won't know who you are or what your story is. So I know who
Mhm.
you are, but if you could share with the people listening a bit about you, your story, and why it is so hard when you get those
Mm, mhm.
cards at the end of the
Well,
year.
my name is Scarlett Lewis. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, Amelia, Dr. Kelly.
Definitely, of
And
course.
so I am the mom of a victim of Sandy Hook. My 6-year-old son, Jesse McCord Lewis, lost his life that day. And in response to that, I decided that I would be part of the solution. I knew that what happened was 100% preventable. And so really quit my job, dedicated my life, started the Choose Love movement, seeing the polarization of our country 13 years ago, kind of a precursor to what it
Oh,
is right
yeah.
now, but also understanding that polarization coming from two opposite points will not solve problems. And so I wanted to create a bridge where we could all come together. And I thought, well, what do we all have in common? The want and need to love and be loved. And when we do not have that, we suffer. That was part of the problem at Sandy Hook for the shooter himself. And of course, it was not my idea. It was actually Jesse's idea. He left a message on our kitchen chalkboard, three words that he wrote as a first grader just learning to write: nurturing, healing, love. They were phonetically
Oh my
spelled,
gosh.
but when I saw them, I
Ugh.
found them after
I have
I
goosebumps,
live
literally.
in goosebumps because I
Yeah.
knew that that was not a message that a 6-year-old little boy would write. I knew that it was
No.
a spiritual message coming through him. And I took that as the purpose for my life, to spread that, knowing that that alone could have prevented the Sandy Hook tragedy and so much of the suffering that we're seeing in our society.
So I was so excited when we first linked up last month because I really strongly believe in what you're doing. And as I was mentioning to you, it aligns really well with what I'm hoping to see happen in school
Mhm.
systems, where I'm looking for the front door of who needs the help, what's happening. Let's find these things and these kids and these experiences
Mhm.
early. But then what do we do on the other side of the door? We need good quality. You said don't call it emotional, or what did you say? Don't call it character ed. You had a different term for it. What was it
I
you said
say
to me?
essential life skills because that's exactly
Essential life
what they
skills.
are. We are not born with
Yep.
them. We have to learn them.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, I didn't have them as a 44-year-old single mom of two boys, despite the fact that I'm a college graduate. I had been an investment banker. And I mean, just I was not socially and emotionally competent. And you can't give your kids what you don't have. And I know I'm not the only one. And even if you are, and that's wonderful, there are other parents that aren't. So it's really serving to make
Right.
sure that your school has this. And these skills and tools are how we have self control. It's how we face pain in our lives and disappointment and difficulty and bullying and all these other things, and are able to learn and grow and be strengthened by that experience instead of being taken down and then to take down
Right.
others in revenge.
Mm. So, can I ask you if we were going to take what you teach in Choose Love and apply it to like a typical scenario? So, a child who maybe doesn't have parents who openly talk about emotional needs, or as we call emotional intelligence or expression in general. It's just not the norm in the home. They're in the school
Or they're not
and
modeled
there are
that, right? They're
kids.
not modeled how to handle tough situations. And our little kids are looking at
Yeah.
everything that we do, every conversation that we have, and they're learning from us.
I like that you pointed that out because it is not just let's tell them, but it's what are they
It's
seeing
more
us
about
doing?
showing, it's more about how parents are
Yeah.
behaving in situations that come up every single day that are stressful. How are we handling our ourselves? And that's how we're teaching our kids,
Hmm.
not necessarily sitting them down and having lessons.
Yeah, and I appreciated that because, like I said, I have experience as a guidance counselor, and this was well over 15 years ago or so, or maybe it's about 15 years ago. And I remember I was teaching character ed, but I was going, and at the time I remember rolling a TV into the room. I don't think that'd be happening anymore, but rolling the TV into the room or bringing the art supplies in, and the kids were excited and they were hungry for it. It was at an elementary school. But I was doing things like teaching, and this was the curriculum that was handed to me, things like bravery and courage. And those are absolutely important things to teach. But I didn't feel like they were being equipped with any ways of going, okay, so brave means this. What does that look like? Like, what does that feel like? Where does my body get sensation when I feel brave? And just to use brave is a common thing that I remember going
Well,
over with them.
our
Is very
formula starts with courage, and that is the most important character value because that's what gives us the ability to face difficulty instead of resist, avoid, or maybe numb ourselves. And courage is like a muscle we can practice to strengthen it. But you're right, teaching all of those things. We have a formula that is neuroscientifically accurate and designed to return our locus of control, which is our personal power, back inside of
right,
us. When it's inside of us, we feel like we have the ability to make changes conducive to a better future. That's the definition of hope. And when it's outside of us, we know because we find ourselves blaming other people for where we are and what's happening. We finger point, fault find, we victimize ourselves to others. We feel helpless, and that can actually lead to hopelessness. And hopelessness is the
right.
single most consistent factor in suicide and violence. So we have this,
Absolutely.
we have the formula, and we have something called the choice moment model. This is the space in between what is happening and our response. This space is our superpower as human beings. And the cool thing about Choose Love is that all of the tools that we teach are universal. So they're for all ages and stages. They're as appropriate for kindergartners as they are for us as adults. So when something happens, feel yourself get triggered, your cheeks get bright red, you feel the anger coming on. And that's when you pause and get curious. It's fascinating how our brain processes information. So through our five senses, this comes into a little kidney shaped area in our brain called the thalamus, which acts as a relay station to both our fear center, our amygdala, as well as our prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning center. But our amygdala, our fear center, is 4 times faster at processing that information. So I'm right now not even realizing it, listening to the tone of your voice, watching your body language. And if I am triggered in some way by some sort of memory that I may not even remember consciously from my past, this is all going through my amygdala first. I might be triggered, and it might my fear center might hijack. It's called hijacking that information. So I might react in an off-putting way, or, and this is always what we want, unless it's life threatening, and of course that's why our bodies are and brains are designed this way. It works, and we don't
Right.
take that away. We're always going to feel the trigger. We're always going to feel the flush. And if it's life threatening, we have the ability, and we will be hijacked, but that's okay because we get ready to freeze, fight, flight, or fawn. Excuse me. However, if it's an emotional hurt and your life is not in danger, you want to thoughtfully respond from the highest and best version of yourself, which is your prefrontal cortex. So you pause in this space and get curious. That moves the information up here. This is where the brake on your instinctual reactions is, as well as your ability to what we call choose love as a thoughtful response. So I pause, I get curious, just quickly. It's a quick, thoughtful response, wondering why the person said or did what they did, and then I can make a what we call a heroic choice because it literally is not the way our brains are wired. So this is where the learning comes in. I can choose. Of course, it takes a lot of courage to pause because, and
Right.
some adults that don't know the pause, and they just react in every situation. We read about them. Uh, those are who are defined by the pain that's happened in their lives rather than refined by it. And then here, I can make a thoughtful response of what we call love, which is forgiveness or compassion and empathy or even gratitude. So, really, really powerful. It's to bring our power back to ourselves so that we can become the highest and best version of ourselves.
I love it's funny. I feel like you took a whole probably, decade of neuroscience and put it into a 3 to 4 minute cliff notes of this is what happens when we're triggered. And I can see how for children to be able to slow that down and provide it in a way where it's understandable, where they can start to scaffold the new ideas and apply it would be so powerful because the things that you're talking about, I didn't learn about until I was well out of grade school and high school and in my field. Whereas imagine if our kids, to your point, we're learning these things in school, in the place where they're spending the most time, in the place where we are trying to make sure that they
Yeah.
remain safe so that they can learn. Now, I want to tell you and learn. I mean like all the scholastic academics. I want to tell you something. And I want to get your impression of this. When I was planning my TED Talk, which, as many people know, is about instituting screeners in schools, wellness screeners, I had presented my idea, and it was initially chosen. I had been chosen, and I was very excited. It was years of applying, and just thrilled and felt so blessed. And you write your script and your idea, and then they look through your script and idea, and then they tear it apart if they need to. They ask you to change things. They coach you. There was a particular person on the team who I will remain unnamed who opposed my idea, who said that they felt that school should be for math
Hmm.
and writing and not a place where anyone in the school system should have the
Hmm.
burden or the responsibility or be trusted. This was someone who I didn't try to get into why they felt the way they felt. I just took what they felt and used it to fuel my research for my talk. It made me think, okay, if I'm not speaking to only people who think this is a good idea, I have to make sure I'm speaking to the people who don't think this is a good idea as well. So, in a way, I feel blessed for that controversial conversation I had because I believe, made it
Hmm.
better. But I it was one of those moments where you're thinking, wow, there are people who feel so very differently than I do about what our kids should be experiencing in
Hmm.
schools. I don't think we can send our children for, I don't know, 30 hours a week or however much it equates to in a space where we want their brains to be able to soak up information and them to be
Hmm.
safe and them to learn how to function in
Hmm.
society. If we take mental health off the table in the schools, obviously I fought on it because I still did the talk exactly how I wanted to, with some extra information and more research, which I did appreciate. How do you feel about that perspective? Because that person is not alone. There are other people who also feel
Hmm.
this way.
Hmm. That's true. And there's so much research that shows when you teach these essential life skills in school that kids get better grades and test scores, higher attendance,
Absolutely.
higher graduation rates. They're
Absolutely.
more likely to go on to college. They have less substance abuse, mental illness, and incarceration later in life. I mean, if
Yes.
you look at the research, there's absolutely no reason not to do it. It is so incredibly important, but I actually can put myself in those people's shoes, with how I was maybe 13 years and a day ago. I wouldn't have been doing the research, and I would be reading the headlines, and I might be listening to how scary some of this sounds, and from people who are uninformed and don't
Right.
really know. I might have been one of them, but and I didn't know about any of this as a parent, so
Right.
so
Hmm.
uh, I just assumed then that all schools were doing what was in my child's best interests, and that they were responsible for my child's safety when the child was at school. And so, I was a single mom. I worked full time. My responsibility for my child in my head was when they were in my custody and control. And what I found is that that's not the case. Literally, when you take your kid, as Jesse's dad says, to school with a book bag, and you pick them up in a body bag, turns out you are responsible for what happens during school hours. And so, if I had known this, I would have been a lot more
Yeah.
involved. I would have done my research. I would have made sure that what was in my child's best interest was being done. You know, Fortunately,
Yeah.
sometimes it's budgets, and and that guide the day, and liability, budgets and liability, and not our children's best interest. So as parents, I've been saying we need to get involved. We need to understand this. Look at the research. I have
Right.
studied this for the last 13 years. I've literally dedicated my life to keeping our kids safe and well. And so, and this is how to do it. Not only for the kids, by the way, in schools, but what I started really researching was I could be the highest and best version of myself. So I could model for my 12-year-old son how, who was
Right.
the surviving son, how to
Oh my gosh,
go
I can't even
through
imagine.
this tremendous tragedy. As a single mom, the
Right.
only person that he has, all eyes were on me as to how to do this. And so I really started out thinking, doing this for myself as a healing journey, but then realizing, wow, I didn't know all of this. You can
Right.
actually become stronger and more resilient because of difficult times in your life, even
Yep.
tragedy. This concept of post traumatic growth, which I now know most people have not heard of, and so I created a program really heavily based on what worked for me and my son to teach in schools. That it's the only program that focuses on post traumatic growth and how to learn, grow, and be strengthened by difficulty in life.
Yeah.
Here's the most powerful connector that we have as humans, and that is pain. It's often
Yeah.
overlooked. Pain is what gets us out of our comfort zone into our growth zone, and being able to have the courage to face that pain and grow
Hmm.
through it is absolutely key to becoming the best version of ourselves, to finding meaning in the times when we suffer, to gaining a purpose that truly energizes us and gives us our best life.
Right. When you talk about post-traumatic growth, which I love that term because it really is so on the point. And I think other people might have heard it called trauma integration before, where you're taking your story and it informs the way you think, the way you react. I mean, the whole reason that I am a therapist is from trauma integration. I mean, my own pain has driven my own desire to work with trauma. And so we can look at it in this very obvious way
But you
like that.
know, like
Or
trauma integration, when I think of that word, it's just when I hear it, because I feel
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm integrating the painful experiences into who I am and who I am becoming, which is true. But with post-traumatic growth, and particularly with forgiveness, you are able to integrate lessons and growth and then leave the pain. I don't like the feeling of, like, that's why I have a problem with the word coping, because coping to me seems like it's like, hey, pain, yeah, you're going to be around for a while. We're going to be in this together. So, you take the right side of the bed, I'll take the left, you don't use my toothbrush, that type of, and and that's not how I like to think about it. I like to think of, like our bodies do with food. They take the nutrients that it needs, they get rid of the rest. And I like to think of pain in that way too. I'd like to learn my lessons from the experience or failure or, whatever, and then let go of the pain.
I can see that. I mean, I think that's how I see both terms. I think they're just kind of different ways of explaining it. Specifically, when I think of trauma integration, I think of, like, let's say a survivor, someone who is a survivor of domestic violence, and they have left, they have gone through the pain of leaving, they have been doing the work, maybe physically, mentally, spiritually,
Mhm.
somatically, and now they know things they didn't know
Mm,
before. And so there's this increase in knowledge and awareness, and it doesn't have to look like something as obvious as starting an organization or becoming a therapist or writing books. It can look like knowing a red flag and allowing yourself or your friend to avoid a potential future unhealthy relationship. So when I see the integration, I see it almost becoming part of the woven information that we now are aware of. It's like a heightened
yeah, that's
awareness.
beautiful. And I like what you said.
That's how I see it.
We go through painful times so that we can learn and grow and help others, is our compassion and action in our formula, to move through their own from what we've.
Yeah. And when I think about this idea of post-traumatic growth, and there's two very specific things I'd love to think about, or I'm imagining someone listening, maybe they're a teacher, maybe they're interdisciplinary team in a school, maybe they're on the PTA. PTA members, you do a lot here. Please spread this message. Um, I want to take a child who maybe doesn't have hope, who feels like everything's against them. It could be at home, it could be all these different pressures coming at them. And they really genuinely have legitimate things to
Mhm.
be stressed
Mhm.
about. They have legitimate
Yeah.
adversity, really tough
So many kids out
adversity.
there like that.
So
Mhm.
many. I think this idea of how do we take someone who feels so hard on the outside because they have to be hard to get
Yeah.
through things, to hear a message like, guess what? That hardness is going to be your biggest strength, your biggest beauty, your biggest ally for your life. How do we take the message that you're saying to me, and I'm receptive to it, and even some kids who might be on the fence, they're getting mixed messaging, but they're hungry for it and they want to hear it. But what about the kid who's like, mm-mm, this doesn't apply to me. This won't apply to me. This life is just too hard. Don't tell
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
what you think is
I'm
good for me.
alone. I'm alone. There's nobody else that's
Yes.
going through what I'm going through, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Well, I think, it's interesting because in my research, I have talked to many school shooters themselves, and I wanted to do that. I didn't get a chance.
That is so brave of you, by
I,
the way. And
yeah, I
so,
want to ask them.
like, I was going to react right away, but I was drinking my water right when you said it.
I want to ask them questions that I don't think they're being asked. And one of them is, how did we
Yes.
fail
It's
you?
amazing.
Because I thought about Adam
I love that.
Lanza in the Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. He was a former student. And so learning a little bit about his life, I understood that he was tested and had special needs that were known and not addressed. He was, and I'm not just talking about the school, I'm talking about his home life as well, but there was, dual responsibility here. He was bullied. He was neglected to a certain degree. And the interesting thing that all schools, former school shooters tell me is that, and I'll ask them, how did we fail you? What did we not give you that you didn't have? Because you weren't born a school shooter or a mass murderer or somebody
Right.
who had the inkling, your suicidal ideation becoming homicidal ideation because of the pain. What happened in
Right.
between when you were born and when this happened? What could we have done to stop it? And they all say the same thing. I did not feel seen. So I really,
Mm.
with that kid that feels hopeless, I think that's the first step. Uh, they feel
Yes.
they
Yes.
feel like they're not enough and they're not worthy to be seen either. So when someone, and this is literally what they have told me. So when someone does try to give them attention, and attention is the purest form of love, they reject it outright because they want to prove to that person that they're not worthy of love, basically. And so it is up to us to be consistently loving and kind. And here's where choose love comes in too, because that's hard. That's hard when someone is rebuffing your efforts and maybe even in an
Yes.
aggressive way. One of the people that I've interviewed and worked with, his name is Aaron Stark. He had a viral TED Talk, one of the most watched of all time. It was called "I Was Almost a School Shooter," and towards the end of
Wow.
that podcast,
I need to write this
yeah,
one down because I need to
yeah,
contact this
I'll
person.
introduce you. Um,
Oh,
towards
great.
the
Thanks. I don't
towards
have to write down.
towards the end of the podcast, I said, Aaron, sometimes I get so overwhelmed by the systems and processes that have to change in order for us to rectify this. And he said, Scarlett, you're wrong. It has nothing to do with systems and processes. It has everything to do with giving love to those we feel deserve it the least because they need it the most. What if, what if everything we're seeing has a simple solution? What if it is just giving attention and love? I mean, that is not Pollyanna-ish. That is power. Um, in
It's
fact,
pure. It's
David
basic.
Brooks, who's the he's a New York Times columnist, but he's an author, of a prolific author, and also sort of a philosopher. And he even wrote a book, How to Know a Person. And in that book, he says one of the greatest sources of suffering in modern life is not hatred or conflict, but invisibility. Many people feel unseen, misunderstood, or reduced to labels. He says a good
Yeah.
life and a healthy society depends on our ability to see others deeply and allow ourselves to be seen. He says this is not a personality trait, but a learnable skill. And maybe we should be focusing on this in schools, teaching our teachers, because this is a skill that I didn't have, or, we think that we're good seers. We think that we're in the present moment. We think that we don't let life's little things get us down. But in reality, we can always be better. And it turns out I wasn't good at it. I was very reactive. I gave as good as I got. And now having practiced, it's a lifelong practice, by
Hmm.
the way. I'm certainly not mastering the choose love skills. The ability to choose love is a thoughtful response with self-control in every situation. But I'll tell you what, my life is better. Of course, I'd give it all back to have Jesse for one more second. But I tell you that my mental health is actually better now than it was before Jesse's murder. My son, who is now 26, is
Oh,
thriving,
wow.
and
Hmm.
so it makes a big difference. It's made a huge
Yeah.
difference in my life.
Mm.
And
You know,
let me
I
just
think
add,
I,
and with the schools that we work with, and we our program's been
yes.
accessed by over 17,000 schools in every state and 132 countries. This is universal life skills for all ages and stages. I've seen the power of what this can do individually for students and students like you're talking about, as well as the educators that are modeling this and the administrators and the families. It
Hmm.
ripples out to communities. It's incredible.
Right. I have a couple questions. A really quick one. Have you had like a graduate student do a study on how your, and I say graduate student because that you could probably more likely grab one of them. Maybe do a study on the outcomes of your
Well,
program?
we've had a university do a study. Yeah,
Oh, okay. That would be, I would love to link that if you want to send
absolutely.
it. I'm sure the results are amazing. I was hopeful that the answer was yes
And,
to
and
that.
plus the fact there have been decades of research on teaching the skills and tools that we include in our program on
Right,
the benefits and
right.
lifetime benefits of a student.
And I think for people listening, when it feels like, okay, it's lifelong learning and there's all these things happening, what you were talking about made me think of two really simple examples. One was from an episode I did a couple weeks ago with another fellow TED Talker who's on a mission to try to change what is happening in our schools, Mark Hulsey, and he was wonderful. And he spoke about the hero protocol. It's very simple. It's something that a coach made up in one of his in his school, that anyone who was wearing a football uniform in his school had to make an effort to speak to anyone who in the lunchrooms, in the hallways, didn't have someone to hang out with, didn't have a friend. He called it the hero protocol. And he said, if you're not doing it, you can sit the bench. And I thought that was such a simple but powerful way to take people that in a school system, maybe, hierarchy in the high school, who would normally, carry some sway socially, to do something as simple as just say, hey, how you doing? Or sit near them. That's huge. So I'll let you respond on that in a moment if you want. But what you were talking about made me think of something I used to do as a guidance counselor, that at the time I just thought, well, this is helping. I don't know if I really thought why. Um, when I would get a disciplinary call, like if I had two kids who were fighting in the classroom, they were sent to me, and this was in elementary school, but it was a challenging one. I'll just put it that way. Um, the kids would get sent to my room, and instead of me asking what happened, I would start with them playing 20 questions with each other
Interesting.
because I wanted them to learn about each other. And almost every single time when we would do 20 questions, the story would start to come out a little bit more organically, that I usually never had to ask what happened.
That's fascinating because curiosity is a sign of intelligence, but it also comes from our prefrontal cortex, our executive level
Right,
functioning brain. So you move them from here, the anger, to where the break is on the anger, and with
right.
that curiosity, that's fascinating. I really like that strategy. And I would like to respond to the hero protocol.
Yes, I'd
You
love
know,
to hear
I
your
think I
response.
think in the best case scenario, you think of an athlete, a popular athlete, as someone that feels really good about themselves. And it's people that feel good about themselves, that feel worthy, that are friendly to everyone and kind and inclusive. And then, but unfortunately, you do have these athletes that even though they perform on the field, they still feel unworthy. And so they have to further prove themselves by being me. They think that that's power over by getting power over someone and proving even more to other kids that they are worthy. And the fact of the matter is, when people do that, and this is what we teach in Choose Love, we want them to understand that a person that does that, so someone that exhibits bullying behavior, that person actually feels unworthy. They actually
Right.
are acting from a point of pain. In fact, there is research that says almost 97% of bullying comes from either having been bullied because you learn that behavior, or
Right.
and/or pain. And so when you understand that a bullying behavior, I don't like the label of bully, because what we teach is that a bully is a person in pain, and that hurt people. But if you
Right.
understand that, it takes all the power away from that person, and you can even empathize with them by understanding, ah, this person is being mean to me not because I'm unworthy, but because they're in pain and they're trying to take it out on me. And it's usually in the form of revenge. And when you understand the science of revenge, this understanding completely unravels that scenario and takes away the power and puts the bullying behavior in its place. And an appropriate response would be, hey, what's wrong? Or walk away, or is there something that I can do? I think that far too often our anti-bullying, I don't like the double negative,
Yeah.
programs focus on what not to do instead of giving what to do. Like my mom always used to teach us, when we made mistakes, she said, what you could have said was. And then she gave us that. And that was a really effective way of learning.
I like that because it follows. I know you're a fan of neuroscience supporting things, so it really does follow that because when we're in a compassion portion of our brain, the areas of the brain that are firing are not the critical brain. So the critical brain and the compassion brain have a hard time firing at the same time. The interesting thing is that compassion and creativity fire easily together. So the more this really
But
relates to
those
even
are
if
the
you want to make
reward
changes,
circuits. Those are the reward
of
circuits.
course.
So when you can
And
thoughtfully respond with love to bullying behavior,
mhm,
you're actually rewarded for it.
right. But then when we look at children who we have the impulsivity, we have less developed frontal lobes, we are, to your point, what you said earlier on, we are the stewards as the adults, as the parents, as the teachers, as the caregivers, as the school professionals. We are the stewards who are the ones that are going to teach that and show that. And we can't. It's so interesting when you think about the fact that psychology, really, the thing of psychology, has really not even been around for more than 2 centuries at this point. Like we were still painting babies as adults, as little mini
Mm,
adults in the Renaissance, because we didn't understand the human brain, especially the
mhm,
child brain. And so we're in this rapid time now where we're starting to learn all of this and
mhm.
understand all of this. We can look in the brain in ways we weren't even able to do at the beginning of my career, to be honest. But now we have all of this, and it is our responsibility to figure out how to make it available to our kids to prevent, like you said, 13 years and 1 day ago, or how it was very recent, right? Wasn't it last week or so?
Are you saying the anniversary? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
December 14th. And we do
right.
know so much more, but it is amazing to me how long updated research, neuroscience on the brain takes to get into not only the public's hands, but into our schools. And we need to be better about that because, there are programs, including Choose Love, that have the latest neuroscience, and it's available to schools at no cost. So there's actually no
Yeah.
excuse.
Well, and I can say this as someone who worked in the school system. There's a notion that we don't want to put more on the school system and we don't want to put more on teachers. what you and I are talking about, what you're talking about with Choose Love, and what I'm talking about with mental health screeners in schools and wellness screeners in schools, which, to go back to your statement about being seen, that is the entire point of why I want to have this happen and why I am working tirelessly right now. This morning, begging someone at the DODEA to call me back, talking to different policymakers. I will not rest, because I told you when I met you, this idea, it was pruned further by clinical experience, but it came from the tragedy of what happened to your child and his classmates. This began after Sandy Hook. I was on the brink of becoming a mom myself. And I have to tell you, earlier in our conversation, I had to take a couple deep breaths and keep myself from breaking down, because I realized that the ages that you and your son were is where I'm at now. And just the full circleness of that, how old my son is, and myself. Like that just, I cannot tell you how meaningful this connection is to me, and like how much I want to support what you're doing. And the fact that I think for us to identify who needs the help and to see the people. Can you imagine if it was normal to ask our kids how they were doing on a normal basis? It was so normal that it was just like checking their vision and their hearing. That there are kids that would be found and seen and heard way before any of
And
these
you know what? While
tragedies.
you're talking, it's like, well, I'm thinking maybe some of the audience is thinking, well, that's just, isn't that what happens? But when you think about what's happening today in our society, uh, I feel like, and I don't know if you have experienced this too, people are having a harder time making eye contact. And we have this constant, this addiction, by the way, this
She's holding up a phone, folks, for anyone not watching.
ability to scroll and get continuous hits of dopamine.
Yes. And then flat face while you're interacting with your child.
Flat face, or even hold on a minute, hold on, let mommy finish her text, which I've done, believe it or not.
Yeah, I
Older
mean,
child,
admittedly, I don't know any of us who
after
haven't.
my younger child was, but I mean, that's the power of, what I sometimes refer to as a crack pipe in our back pocket. And what you're saying is that this is more important than you are. And we need to put this device away. We need to have dinners without this on the table. That
100%.
shows that even if you're not using it, even a cell phone on the table is distracting to everyone. And so, we
Yep.
need to remove the distractions. We need to go back to simplicity and authentic connection. We need to see one another. You know what? Here, I'll give a little example. I'm a great example for mistakes made. So, 3 weeks before the tragedy, we had dinner, and my mom and I lingered at the table with a glass of wine. The boys went off to their rooms to play, and Jesse comes running in, and I'm kind of, if you can imagine this, kind of swooshing my wine, looking over my right shoulder at him as he says, "Mom, what would I do if a school shooter came to my classroom?" And
Oh my gosh.
believe it or not, I said, hmm, I said, "Run zigzag." And he shrugged his shoulders and kind of said, "Okay," and ran back to his room. That was the last that I thought of this. I didn't even remember that. My mom reminded me maybe
Yeah.
2 years after the tragedy. Well, that was because he had had an active shooter drill that day. Unbeknownst to
Oh,
me,
okay.
I didn't know it. And so now, of course, in hindsight, I would have put my glass of wine down, dropped to my knees, looked him in the eyes and said, "Why are you asking me that question?" Uh, but I
Yeah.
didn't. And, just further, we are having active shooter drills in our schools. Parents, you need to be aware
Right.
of this. It is traumatizing to some kids. We've got our dandelions out there who, grow through
Highly
cracks.
sensitive versus
Yeah,
the,
and
yep.
then we've got our orchids who are more sensitive kids,
Absolutely.
and but we're doing this thing to all of them. And I am not making an opinion here about whether that is good or bad. I'm just saying it is what it is, and we need to be aware of it. And in addition to, there's so much focus, I will say, on the Department of Homeland Security's attack end of pathway to violence. The pathway to violence starts with a grievance and then escalates ideation, preparation, a few more steps into an attack. The way that our brains are wired, we've been talking about neuroscience, we're reactive and defensive. Uh, and so we focus on the negative, even in our thoughts every day. The majority of our thoughts are negative and
Right.
repetitive. And even just that simple awareness and having some skills to switch that makes our lives better. Just thinking of a grateful thought improves our mood by 10%. Like these are simple things and easy things to do. But, we're out there in school safety focusing on the attack end of the pathway to violence. I saw that and I thought, why don't we also at least
Right.
give as much attention, and really we should be giving more attention to the grievance end of the pathway, providing
Right.
essential life skills that enable us to manage the grievance. And now we know we can even preempt a grievance from happening, but at the very least manage a grievance so that it doesn't escalate. We can do that with simple awarenesses and life skills. And they not only benefit the student, they benefit the teacher, they benefit the parents, and all
Well,
communities.
yeah.
These are skills that employers are looking for.
And that was the, I think earlier I was going to make that point and then we got off onto something else because that's what we do. Is as a school educator, as a guidance counselor in the school system, it would have been helpful for me to know who was struggling before a crisis. It would have been helpful to know, to have a way to hear grievances early on and to have something so structured like this. Like what our ideas are, in the end, take the pressure off of the teachers because it gives them pathways, it gives them structure, it gives them resources. Honestly, this is not more. This is a way to not have to be detectives and sleuths and walking around. My county now has the teachers doing. We had to sign off. We could opt in, opt out as parents, which is what I would do with my idea as well. Opt in or opt out. But is now our teachers are doing a wellness assessment on the students. In my mind, I'm thinking that is exactly what I'm saying we don't need to do, is to put an extra layer of work on the teachers. We need to hear from the students. So, that being said, when you were talking about, I love that you said, why can't we do both? Like, yes, we are saying let's do prep. Let's make sure that things are safe. I mean, honestly, I called my school. Last year, I went to go drop something off and I got buzzed in. It's locked down. There's a camera. It's like a whole thing to get in, which I appreciate. As I was there and I was going in, they just buzzed in a Grubhub driver without anything. Like he just went right on in. And I said, how come we're letting these random people who don't have a child into the school? I know they're bringing food. No offense to Grubhub. I love Grubhub. But so I called the principal and I said, is there any way you can put a table outside for the Grubhub deliveries to be dropped? There's no reason they should be going into the school. It's just unnecessary. A week later, they had a table. So it's like these little ideas. If something comes up, of course we want to be smart. Of course we want to be prepared. But that's only going to continue to put band aids on if we don't have your idea. And honestly, my idea, like identifying what the problem is, which is what I'm really wanting to approach, and then having something to do
Yeah.
for it. Having a way to equip kids, which is what kids and parents and
Yeah, you
teachers.
you identified two really great things. One, parent involvement. You were there and you noticed a fault in their safety
Yeah.
system. And that's a big one. And by
Mm-hmm.
the way, it's not the only school that does that.
Okay. Anyone listening, just have a Grubhub drop
Make
outside.
sure that happens. Make sure that happens. Um,
Yes.
it actually astounds me how unregulated school safety is across the country. I mean, schools kind of come about it themselves. They should all have advisory boards made up of students, community members, corporate sponsors, students themselves that are looking at the safety of the school and making sure not only they have both ends, but that they feel safe and secure. That
Right.
is so
Right.
important because when a child doesn't feel safe, and so
Right.
many kids tell me, you know,
Which the screeners I want will have that question. The free and very affordable screeners that are age appropriate ask that question. Do you feel safe in school? That's key.
and just so every parent knows, yeah, you can do everything that you can spend all the money and all the technology on external safety measures, and they can be breached. Sandy Hook Elementary School had all the latest modern technology, and mistakes are always made as well. And so what we do is we learn from mistakes, always a step behind. That is not best case scenario for our kids. And in fact, our kids are
No.
losing confidence in our ability to keep them safe. And that is not a good thing. So we really need
Yeah.
to step it
You're
up.
right.
Yes, as parents, this is your responsibility. I learned that because my child was murdered in his school. And guess who was responsible ultimately? I was. So that is why I am dedicating my life to keeping all kids safe. And I've researched this. I do this 7 days a week, all day long. I'm literally obsessed with it because
I feel your
because
passion.
it is a passion, and grateful to be
Yeah.
able to do it. But also, I've learned a lot. I have lived experience and credibility in what I'm saying, and you need to make sure. I mean, what comparison? Like, there's this anxiety I think that parents have that when they send their kids to school, and the opposite of anxiety is positive action. So, what can you do? You can call your school and you can offer to have a meeting maybe to discuss the safety protocols. I know schools don't want to make that too public because then that leaks out and that can also cause a way to breach. But if you have questions, you can ask your school. You also need, and I wish that I had called my school to make sure that they have some sort of essential life skills program, and not just, and the school should be able to say, yes, we have this program. They should, everyone, it doesn't matter who you speak to, they should say, oh yeah, we have this program. It is for every grade. There is a parent component. We teach it, once a day, once a week, in morning announcements. I mean, they should be able to tell you. They should be happy to tell you. And if they don't have something, then you can tell them about choose love because it's
I
lost.
love
and
that.
uh, and you can say, there's I just heard this podcast. I mean, and here's the great thing about this. You make that call. You can even make that call in front of your child. You know why? Because it's a hard conversation, right? And you think, well, should I actually do it in front of my child? You should, regardless of the age.
Yeah.
You know why? Because your kid
I love that.
sees you doing a positive action that is caring and concerned for their safety. That helps. And then that positive action, you've done what you can do and you let that worry go because the vast majority of what we worry about never happens. And so that is a great thing that you can do, but we do have to take action.
I love what you just said because I think a lot of people, especially that listen to this podcast, are sensitive empaths and they care so much about the world. And compassion fatigue is such a real thing. And it comes normally when we feel that there's nothing we can do. So being able to pick up the phone and mention something like Scarlett's Choose Love, ask if they would consider screeners in schools as well. Let them know there's a movement. Connect them with me. I'm happy to talk to any educators, any policymakers, and say this is not only why it should be done, but how you can do it. I am so honored that you came on to talk to everyone listening today and to speak with me. And I cannot wait to continue working with your organization. I am so passionate about spreading the word and making this something that's available to everyone because it is truly unfair of us to not equip all children with this knowledge. So, Scarlett, thank you again so much for being on. If there's anyone listening who wants to connect with you, help you, be an ambassador for you, or just learn, where can they find you and your organization and everything that you continue to be doing 7 days a
Yeah,
week?
absolutely. And thank you for having me on. And this was a fantastic conversation. I hope it's helpful to a lot of people. And those of you listening, I'm sure that you know somebody that could benefit from this. So please forward to your friends and everyone to help spread awareness. That's really important. I've learned through starting a movement, and that's now a worldwide movement, that the most powerful way to spread a message is by word of mouth, and that word of mouth is yours. So thank you so much for helping us spread this really important message about our children's safety, health, and well-being. And with that being said, if you would like to know more about Choose Love, our website is chooselovemovement.org. There is registration there. If you want to introduce it to the teachers, you can tell them. They can register. You can register. We have a parent part of our program. They can register and they can have access to our program in all grade levels, from infant, toddler, you can't start early enough, to 12th grade. If you want to contact me, when you go on our website, chooselovemovement.org, there is a yellow contact button, and that goes to my team who will forward that to me. You can tell them that you heard me speak with Dr. Kelley on her podcast, and that will go to me, and I will respond.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scarlett. And I hope everyone feels empowered and that you go out and you make that choice and you do something today. Be well, everyone.